I will loop back round to
Mm.
individual development because you
Right.
shared a process with me prior to the call and
Mm.
said, look, let's lean into this. I think there's some value in sharing it. Like, I think people that even if they're not a part of the Sales
Oh,
Sniper
for sure.
organization, this could be useful even for someone themselves trying to do it. So why don't you take us through your 5 steps here and just elaborate into each of them of, I suppose, how they're used and why they're important.
It's funny, right? Because once you realize how simple it is to make change and develop, you're just like, why didn't I think of that before? But reality is it's so straightforward and not complicated, and people try and make things far more complicated than is needed. We have 5 simple steps. Now, I'll give examples of how we apply this to actual sales, right, and get better at sales. But this can be applied in any aspect of life. It is very simple. And you know what? Like, this isn't the perfect way. This is something that I've made up to teach myself. And then I've relayed that onto others, refined it, made it better. And I imagine if we redo this podcast in 12 months, it'll be different and far more developed. So it's really simple. Like, step one is acknowledgement, right? Now, I change that word quite often. And the reason it's important is like, you can't change anything that you don't know exists. So, awareness is another word that we use in step one. It's interchangeable, really. And that just comes down to like understanding what needs to be worked on. Now, as like the leadership team, most of the time point out what that is to our staff. And what I mean by that is we'll pick one thing that if they fix that, it will have the greatest impact on their ability to move forward with that, i.e. sales. So that could be tonality, ability to handle objections. It could be structure, whatever that might be. We'll listen to a call and be like, that's the biggest thing they're doing wrong. Let's fix that. Now, the person on the other end, or let's just say little Timmy comes to us, he gets a job, and Timmy has no structure. He just says whatever comes to mind. He doesn't have a script, right? So like, I'll recognize that straight away and say, hey, Timmy, like, I don't know if you're aware of this, buddy, but your structure's a little bit all over the place. Like, we did your call review. We gave you a score of like 10 out of 25, right? For you to get to that next step, like, I need that to be at an 18. Okay. So I think the biggest way for you to get to that next step is by working on your structure. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to build out a script for you. And then I'm going to give you some strategies on how to ingrain that into your brain so that even if you lost that script, you'd be able to go through a process, right, to get the response that you need from someone in order to make the sale. Now, he might not have been aware of that. Maybe he was. Okay. And the whole point is to go through this process of development with people to the point that they no longer need me, right? Because I don't want, and I don't have the time anyway to pull out these minor things on a consistent basis with every single one of our staff. So the whole intention is to teach this process for them so that they can review their own calls and be like, I see where I'm messing up. Then they can ask for some strategy or they can come up with their own strategy. And it's really funny because a lot of the times I get on calls and someone says, I need help with this, right? And it could be a half an hour call and we finish the call in 5 minutes because I'm like, you already know the answer. You've already told me. You've just not recognized it. So like you said, X, Y, Z. So like, why don't you just do that? You're like, yeah, you're right. I'm like, okay, go do that. Come back to me in 30 days. So it's funny. So step one is just like awareness and understanding of what exists so that we know how to solve it. Step two, quite simply, we put in a strategy. Right now, let's say for little Timmy, that strategy was understanding the script. It's not just here's a script. It's like, okay, Timmy, like your job is to practice this script every day. Like I want you to do 4 role plays a week. I want you to review your calls 3 times a week. But more importantly, I want you to assign like 1 to 2 hours to study that script. And we're going to give you like a document that we have internally on understanding things. Now that just isn't memorizing words. That's, let's say the opening line on that could be, hey, this is Timmy from XYZ, just here to talk to you about XYZ, right? It's not memorizing that word. It's understanding, okay, what's the intention behind why I asked that? With this sentence that I'm asking, why am I saying that? Am I looking for a certain response? What is that response? Can I ask that in a different way to get said response? That way you understand the intention of why you're doing something. When you understand the intention, you get a better concept of where you're going, why you're going there and where you need to get to, so that you don't need to follow a script word for word, but you can change the process, adjust it as the conversation evolves. So it is a more free-flowing conversation, kind of like this, rather than us just putting 30 points up and say, okay, like we've talked about this, cross it off. Next point, let's talk about this, cross it off. It's not very engaging. It feels like, as you said on the sales call before, it's like, I know what you're doing. You're just reading off a script. I can feel that. So we need to teach people how to have natural conversations. So the strategy could be like, okay, these are the 3 action points. You're going to go do that.
Hey guys, so if you enjoyed this little short snippet of the podcast, then here is another short snippet that you can watch. Or if you want to watch the entire episode, you can just click here. All right, guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. Bye.